You're about to watch what we call an extended clip of the Young Turks, and the reality is it's somewhere in the middle. It's a little longer than our YouTube clips, but it's actually shorter than the whole 2-hour show, which you can get if you're a member. You can get it ad-free, and make sure you catch every news story we do that day. You're gonna love it as a full show. That's at tytnetwork.com/join. Thanks for watching. All right, welcome to the Young Turks. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur. We have a phenomenal show for you guys tonight. I have not one, but two exclusives for you. A story that the Young Turks broke last night. I'll tell you all about it in just a second. Nomiki Konst did that for us. And then an exclusive ad against Dianne Feinstein that you're gonna see in a little bit. And I promise you it is hard hitting and you will enjoy it. So a little bit later in the program, I've got good news for you guys. It's starting to become a trend, isn't it? Good news for progressives. I got another electoral win, and I've got more tipping points in the middle of the country. It's two different stories. All of a sudden, good news in America. Interesting. Okay, and then of course, also bad news. So we know who the YouTube shooter is now, and what apparently might have motivated her. And that is an interesting and wild story. And of course, we've got Trump tribalism. So two different interesting stories on that throughout the hour as well. It's a packed show. Let's go. Nomiki Konst last night reporting for the Young Turks broke a story about Democratic Party politics in New York. Now, this is a really, really important one. It revolves around not just the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, but the Independent Democratic Conference, that is the IDC in New York. See, if you're not familiar with New York politics, what happened was a group of renegade, that makes them sound too cool, Democrats broke off from the Democratic Party and decided that they were going to work with the Republicans and swing power in the Republican direction. Now, that seemed to coincide with the reign of Governor Andrew Cuomo, and I'll give you the details on that. That was greatly frustrating to progressives in New York. And Nomiki last night broke the story that the reign of the IDC is over. Interesting, so here's a tweet in the middle of the night. I think she had it at 12:30 Eastern. Breaking, insider sources say Governor Cuomo calling for an independent Democratic conference to disband as soon as tomorrow. Another source, a last minute call with the New York State Senate Democratic Conference is scheduled for tomorrow morning. Now that all turned out to be true and now confirmed by the New York Times and others. And she does have excellent sources, bless her heart. So let's go to the New York Times for an explanation of what happened. Two warring factions of Democratic lawmakers, they explain, have agreed to reunite and even and end, I should say, 7 years of infighting that has helped give Republicans a foothold of power in Albany in a dramatic upheaval of New York politics. Now I'm going to tell you why Cuomo is doing this today. Now, Cuomo will say, golly gee, me, I don't have anything to do with the IDC. That's not my group. That happens to be a breakaway group of Democrats that has nothing to do with me. Let's find out about that. An alliance in the state Senate between Republicans and a renegade group of Democrats known as the Independent Democratic Conference was formed during Governor Andrew Cuomo's first week in office. Okay, well, that's our first clue. So, he gets in the office and then all of a sudden there is this breakaway group that somehow happens to hand Republicans power. Now, if you're asking, why would a Democrat want Republicans in power in any way, even this weird convoluted way? Well, it's so that whenever he passes anything, he seems like a hero. Oh my God, I got it passed anyway. And whatever he doesn't want passed, he can go, the Republicans, I know it's a deeply blue state, but the Republicans made me do it. The IDC, what could I do? There was nothing I could do. Did we give more advantages to all my donors? There was nothing we could do. In the first week, it was not well disguised. Okay, so for years, Mr. Cuomo, again, the New York Times continues here, had said it was not in his power to arrange a, quote, shotgun marriage between Mr. Klein and Miss Stewart Cousins. She leads the main Democrats in New York. And as a deal came together, the governor was very much in the middle of it. That's interesting. He said he had nothing to do with it and couldn't do anything about it. All of a sudden, he's doing the deal. and he was right in the middle of it. In fact, he's the one orchestrated. Nomiki reporting that he's the one that called the meeting. He's the one that led the meeting. And at the end of the meeting, the IDC was gone. Turns out there was a lot that Governor Cuomo could do about it. He just chose to do it now. And the timing is interesting. So let's get into that. Why is he doing it? Well, he has a strong primary opponent, which is, of course, making him move to the left. Say it with me. Of course, progressives fight. Even if you don't win elections, it forces Democrats pretending to be progressives to actually take more progressive positions. This happened last time when he was running as Zephyr Teachout too. He moved to the left on a number of issues, and here he goes again. Now Cynthia Nixon is running against him, and she's not buying it. She says, if you've set your own house on fire and watched it burn for 8 years, finally turning on a hose doesn't make you a hero. Well, I kind of love that quote. That's a strong, powerful quote. Now, speaking of Zephyr Teachout, she's now working with Cynthia Nixon on her campaign, which is, by the way, unity. Democratic establishment, that's how you actually do unity. She says Mr. Cuomo's role in unification amounted to, quote, a confession of his complicity of Republican control for the last 7 years. Well, it's really a fair point. If you said there's nothing you can do about it and all of a sudden you're the one who ends the IDC and they started a week into your tenure and then you end them whenever you like, makes it seem like there was a lot you could have done about it at any time that you wanted. Okay, Cuomo announced that Klein, who is the leader of the IDC, must end the IDC altogether. This is according to State of Politics. It's a website in New York. Stuart Cousins will be the sole leader of a reunited Democratic Party, and Klein will serve as a deputy. So when you issue an edict to the so-called leader of the IDC, you will end your group now, and he bows his head, it looks like you were in charge. And as they explain further, without Cuomo's support, Klein has nowhere else to go. Might as well negotiate the terms of your surrender before your options get even worse. So an anonymous Democratic insider said, we can now leave this ugly chapter behind us and work together as one party.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be, featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity. The UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, you must unlearn what you have learned. And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFTR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
An ugly chapter. Okay. Then Cuomo, funny enough, went and gave a speech right afterwards. This one was public. The meeting that ended the IDC was in private. By the way, attended by powerful forces within the Democratic Party, and including Joe Crowley, who's a congressman and a power broker within the Democratic Party. And if there's going to be any backroom deal, Crowley's going to be in it. And apparently he was fine with the IDC. He was fine with the Democrats not being united in New York. And all of a sudden they decided, oh, by the way, not only does Cuomo have a primary, but so does Joe Crowley. with a very progressive Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who's a Justice Democrat. All of a sudden, Crowley and Cuomo get together and like, we need unity, right? I mean, we're progressives, right? Of course. IDC, what do you guys do? Come on, let's end this. How awfully convenient. Okay, so Cuomo goes and gives a speech publicly afterwards and says, we have achieved political clarity. Well, that's good. I'm glad that this primary has caused clarity for you. So what's the clarity that you've achieved? He says, the clarity is this. Everything we are for, they are against. It's that simple. The Democratic Party and the Republican Party are an antithesis one of the other. It took you 7 years to figure that out? I mean, this is preposterous. It's all a matter of convenience for corrupt Democrats. They don't want to win on the policy issues. When it comes to their own race, they desperately want to win and hold on to power and raise the money and then wield that power on behalf of the people who gave them the money in the first place. But when it comes to policy issues, they don't really want to fight. They don't really want to win. So they'll use any excuse to make sure that, oh, golly gee, we lost again, even in a deeply blue state. Nothing we could do. So now all of a sudden he's running in a primary. He's challenged on the left and he's like, I just achieved clarity. I had an epiphany. It turns out the Republican Party and the Democratic Party are two different parties and they're opposed to each other. Why didn't anyone tell me? Pathetic. Now, one last piece of curious timing here. Well, they have a kumbaya moment and the Democratic Party is reunited in New York. Well, I guess it looks like from the facts here that Cuomo could have done it any time he wants. Why did he do it on this particular day? I mean, Nixon announced her candidacy recently. Obviously, that's a huge part of it. That's the main part of it. But listen to this timing. The deal, we go back to the New York Times here. The deal comes less than a week after lawmakers passed a $168 billion budget, a spending plan, Ms. Teachout noted, in which Ms. Stewart-Cousins had been excluded from the negotiations. So the leader of the Democratic Party, not included in obviously in the legislature there, not included in the budget negotiations. The Republicans are there, the IDC is there. They make a budget that is, again, on behalf of the donors. What a wonderful coincidence. The donors keep catching these lucky breaks. And then right after they're done with the budget, then Cuomo turns around and goes, I ended the IDC. I mean, I never had any control over it, but I ended it. I should get credit for ending it, but I should get no blame at all for starting it in the first place and maintaining it for 7 years. What a bad break. We already spent the money. And so now the Democrats will not have any real power, the progressive Democrats at least, will not have any real power in how the money is spent. All these weird coincidences surrounding Andrew Cuomo. Are we really having a conversation about whether he's a progressive? Look, these machinations might work to get him some endorsements, and he has a giant name recognition advantage. We realize that. But as I said on the day that Cynthia Nixon announced, she's got some name recognition too, and she's a strong progressive. And the country and the state of New York are in a progressive mood. Let's see what happens. I think this race is far more interesting than people realize. Okay.
At TYT, we frequently talk about all the ways that big tech companies are taking control of our online lives, constantly monitoring us and storing and selling our data. But that doesn't mean we have to let them. It's possible to stay anonymous online and hide your data from the prying eyes of big tech. And one of the best ways is with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making your activity more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. And it's also easy to install. A single mouse click protects all your devices. But listen, guys, this is important. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET and Wired magazine. So take back control of your life online and secure your data with a top VPN solution available, ExpressVPN. And if you go to expressvpn.com/TYT, you can get 3 extra months for free with this exclusive link just for TYT fans. That's expressvpn.com/TYT. Check it out today.
Cuomo thought he was going to be president. Okay, that's funny. All right, let me go to the other player in that drama for a second. So Joe Crowley is congressman from New York. He's very powerful, arguably one of the top Democrats in the House. Why? He raised a lot of money. I'm going to show you that money in a second. But there's someone finally challenging him, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She is doing phenomenally well. Crowley's never had a challenge like this before, hence me dubbing her Alexandria the Great. It's a fun name. Yesterday on the program, we had Mighty Mary Wilson, who's another Just Democrat running in Texas' 21st District. You should check that out as well. We have all of our interviews with these great candidates on youtube.com/TYTpolitics. So Alexandria now is collecting signatures. She's trying to get to 10,000 signatures to make sure that she's on the ballot and everything's kosher. Of course, what does Joe Crowley do? He controls a lot of the Democratic machine in that area. So conveniently, all of a sudden, voting areas are beginning to change. Oh, that's a heavily minority district that might favor Ocasio-Cortez. Yeah, we're not going to vote there anymore. The polling station is going to, oh man, what a break. We're going to have to move the polling station. I've seen this movie before in New York. Remember when all of a sudden voter purges right before the primary? So this is in some ways, and this is happening throughout the country, but this is a particularly important race in New York because Crowley's such a huge power player in the Democratic Party. Bernie Sanders versus Hillary Clinton all over again. Now, some of you might say, I don't want to re-see that movie. And some of you might think, I'd like to go back to that movie, but give it a different ending. So, and here's your opportunity. So Ocasio-Cortez, very progressive, just Democrat, takes no corporate PAC money, Medicare for all. Crowley has to be brought to some of those positions, like Medicare for all, only after he gets a primary opponent. Before, he was not for Medicare for all. Just Democrats introduce Ocasio-Cortez as a primary opponent and then support the Medicare for all bill in the House. And all of a sudden, Crowley goes, yeah, that's what I meant. That's what I meant. Yeah, interesting. So why does Crowley have all this power within the Democratic Party? Is it because he's really progressive? No. It's because of the money, Lebowski. So let me show you the money that Crowley has raised. So here's a list of his donors. Now, this is his total in his career. So if you add out securities and investment, insurance, and commercial banks, that's around $4.2 million. So that's the financial industry. Real estate is also incredibly powerful in New York and leads to a lot of corruption. That's $1.6 million. Together, that's about $5.8 million. Now, Crowley looks at that and other Democrats look at that and go, bravo, way to raise a lot of money from bankers. Excellent job, Crowley. Real people look at that and go, what are you gonna do on behalf of the people who gave you $5.8 million? You think that bankers gave Crowley money for their health because they thought it was a charity? No, they gave that money for a return on investment, an investment that they have reaped over and over again, and hence donations to Crowley over and over again. But here comes Alexandria, and she doesn't take any of their money. She doesn't take any of it. So how are you gonna corrupt her? Well, you can't. Well, that's the beauty of it. So let me show you just this last election cycle, because if the first time the bankers gave you money, it might have been an accident. The second, the third, the eighth time that they give you money, it is not an accident. That means they did get their return on investment. So here's the latest Crowley chart from the latest election cycle. Look at the bottom there. Can you tell which industry gives Joe the most amount of money? Oh yeah, there it is again. Finance, insurance, and real estate at $726,000. So the money keeps on rolling in. Those are not nonprofit contributions. Those are investments. And so Joe the Banker Crowley doing great with those guys. So what can you do? Well, look, the only way the small donor candidates and the no corporate PAC candidates are going to win is if you actually get their back. So Ocasio2018.com/last call to volunteer, because she needs volunteers. She's got 100 volunteers right now. She needs 200 volunteers. Let's make that happen. Get out there and get those petitions signed. Get her on the ballot. Ocasio2018.com/fight to donate. because your dollars go way, way further for Alexandria than the banker dollars does for Crowley. The Just Democrat folks are much better at spending money because they largely rely on volunteers and grassroots. Look, if she's got 10,000 signatures in that primary, that might be enough to win to begin with. Crowley's never really been challenged. A lot of these folks are gonna win. Brent Welder in Kansas got a big lead on a Republican incumbent. Mighty Mary Wilson's in amazing shape. You got the Liberty Bell, Adrian Bell in Texas. You got Doug Applegate in California, who drove ISA out of Congress. You got Alison Hartson in California, who's closing in on Dianne Feinstein, and the list goes on and on. And then you got Iron Stash against Paul Ryan, and he raised over $2 million in the last quarter. We're coming, but you got to start right now. You got to start right now. You got to start fighting. So join Alexandria, get there in the fight, and make sure that you are represented rather than the bankers. Okay. By the way, always the links are down below. Okay, go to the description box if you're watching on YouTube, or in the comment section on Facebook, and easy to click. Just go right there, boom, and get in the fight. Okay, so now, Young Turks exclusive. Alison Hartson has decided to focus on income inequality on a fitting day, the 50th anniversary of Martin Luther King's assassination. He was doing a poor people's campaign when he was assassinated, and he cared deeply about bringing everyone together to make sure that there was justice for the poor and the middle class. And Alison Hartson is running against Dianne Feinstein, and she's given her a hell of a run. She outraised Dianne Feinstein in small donor money in the last quarter of 2017. She's got a volunteer army of over 1,400 people. And I'm gonna tell you about how you can join in a second. But we have a fun new ad that she has put out. Young Turks have an exclusive on it. I think you're gonna love this. Let's watch.
Dianne Feinstein is worth $80 million. Her husband is a billionaire. Income inequality isn't the problem for her, it's the solution. Dianne Feinstein voted for the Bush tax cuts and to repeal the estate tax. Dianne, how many tax cuts are you going to give yourself? Dianne Feinstein is never going to fix this problem because she is the problem. I'm going to represent you, not the wealthy elite. I'm Alison Hartson, and I approve this message because I'm going to get money and Dianne Feinstein out of politics.
Damn! Booyah! Now we got a race, folks. She's not playing. Look, a lot of people come in, they play patty cakes. Oh, well, the honorable, gentle lady from California has great intentions. No, she doesn't. She voted for the Bush tax cuts because her family's billionaires. She profited to the tune of millions upon millions of dollars by voting for those Bush tax cuts. She voted for Bush's Iraq war, and then her husband got hundreds of millions of dollars in defense contracting. They had to take her off of a committee because she was giving her husband defense contracts in the middle of the Iraq war. No, Dianne Feinstein does not have good intentions. She keeps giving herself break after break after break. You think Dianne Feinstein, who's been in politics for 50 years and never delivered for you, is now all of a sudden gonna turn around and be like, oh wait, the poor and the middle class, I forgot about them as I was giving myself tax cuts over and over again. No, and finally you've got a candidate who's willing to say it, who's willing to call it out, and who's willing to fight for you guys. So you gotta get in the fight. So look, number one, this ad is awesome. I wanna spread this everywhere in California. So in order to help her do that, you gotta give her money to be able to run that ad so more and more people see it and see the reality of Dianne Feinstein. So look, we'll have links down below. Click those links, really easy, and help raise money for the ad or get involved as a volunteer. So as a volunteer, AlisonHartson.com/now. The link JustDemocrats.com/Alison always works to donate to Alison. Just click down below. If you like the message that she's sending, Help send the message. Dianne Feinstein, corporate Democrats, we know what you're about. We know you're never gonna do Medicare for all. Dianne Feinstein went and did a town hall where she said she's not ready yet for Medicare for all. Yet? I mean, you've been in politics 50 years. What do you mean, yet? Okay, and then coincidentally, a week later, she went and raised money from the healthcare industry. It is corruption 101. We don't have income inequality in this country by accident. We have income inequality in this country because people like Dianne Feinstein voted for it. It hurt all of us, but it helped her family tremendously. Why don't you get one of us into Congress to represent you? Alison Hartson is a teacher. Then she took a pay cut to work for a group that wanted to get money out of politics. Why to get money out of politics? Because if you don't, the money corrupts everything. Alison's not taking any PAC money. That's why you got to get in the fight and help her. Be part of Alison's army. Let's have a giant progressive victory. It will shock the world. And Alison's strong enough to make that happen. Let's go right now. Let's get her 2,000 volunteers and let's get her at least $10,000 more to run that ad in digital and perhaps even on television. It appears that Hartson is coming. Okay, we're gonna take a quick break. We're gonna talk about that anniversary of Martin Luther King when we come back. And we've got a lot more news for you guys, including good news for progressives and victories in Wisconsin and a great fight in Oklahoma. We'll come right back. Thanks for listening to this podcast. You're only halfway through, so hold, stay right here. Just want to remind you, if you want to get all 5 segments of the Young Turks commercial free, these are just 2 of them. Every day we do it. So go to tytnetwork.com/join and you get the whole 5 segments, 2 hours, ad free. Do it now. All right, don't miss Rebel headquarters tonight because here comes Rick Trevino. In the Texas primary coverage, we talked about him a lot. He's on now. He made the runoffs. I love these Texas candidates. Last night we had, I can't stop talking about her, mighty Mary Wilson from the 21st district and now Trevino from the 23rd. If you care about progressive victories, you'll love Rebel headquarters. That's next. And then obviously we got the post game after that. tytnetwork.com/join. Okay, what's next, Anna?
Teachers in Oklahoma continue to protest for not only higher pay for themselves and for support staff in the schools, but also to get more funding for their students and for the districts throughout the state. Now, the governor of Oklahoma seems like she's getting a little irritated with these protests, and we have a video interview that she did to prove it. But first, let me give you some details on some of the legislative wins that the teachers have gotten so far and how they're not satisfied with these legislative wins. They want more funding for the schools. On Tuesday, the governor of Oklahoma, Mary Fallin, signed a bill giving teachers support staff, like teachers' aides and janitors, a $1,250 raise. Last week, she signed a measure that gave teachers a $6,000 pay raise, but only added an additional $50 million to school funding. Teachers were asking for $200 million more. Now, keep in mind that school funding has been cut by 28% since 2008. And so what the teachers are asking for is not unreasonable, especially considering some of the evidence that they've shown us regarding the textbooks that they've been using in their classrooms. And also the teachers want $10,000 raises. And part of the reason why is because many of them haven't received a raise in well over a decade. Now, several teachers and parents in Oklahoma who have shared photos and stories via social media of crumbling, outdated textbooks is part of their plea for more education funding. That's according to CNN and multiple media sources. So I'm going to give you a few examples. Here is one of the books that was posted online, and they're doing this through Twitter and Facebook. Apparently in one classroom, a teacher complained that she had 25 anatomy books that were shared by about 70 students. Apparently the school district had changed some of the education requirements recently. And so the 25 anatomy books that she had were enough for the first time in a long time, but that's not a good thing. Why would they change the requirements? Obviously they're lowering standards because they don't have the resources necessary to educate our students. And then here's another example of some books that these teachers and students have to deal with. Now, with that said, what did Governor Mary Fallin have to say about these protesters, about these teachers? Take a look.
Teachers want more, but it's kind of like having a teenage kid that wants a better car.
But true, but their car has been taken away over the last 10 years.
Well, it has been a difficult time, and that's why I'm very proud that this year we were able to get something done for our teachers.
Yeah, they're always talking about the rich in the same way. Like, oh, they want another tax cut. They're just a bunch of spoiled brats. No, they're going to help our economy, and then you'll be way better off. And then teachers will get increases, except they didn't for all this time. In the dark of night, they cut all the way down to 28%, all the way down to the bone. The history books have George W. Bush as president in Oklahoma.
Yes.
Okay, and so then when they now stand up to fight, they go, oh, okay, here's some crumbs, okay? Forget about the last several decades that we've been taking from you and never giving back. By the way, in your job, imagine if 10 years in a row, and that's a minimum, every year you're like, okay, here we go. Am I gonna get a bonus? Am I gonna get a salary increase? And they're like, no, nothing.
Right.
Meanwhile, your health insurance prices are going through the roof. You know, housing's always going up. Everything is going up, but you never get a salary increase, and you never get funding. And every year, the teachers explain one of the things that they fought hardest for is not just to get a salary increase for themselves, but to make sure you increase the funding for the schools. Because every year, at the beginning of the year, they have a conversation of, all right, what are we going to cut from the budget this year? Okay, what are we going to lose? How are we going to make education worse for our kids? Why? They had to make choices. Now, the Republicans have the temerity to now turn around and say like, well, what do you want us to do? Cut health care? Wait a minute, how come you never talk about the tax cuts?
Right.
Never, right? Because you already cut taxes for the rich and they already took the money home.
Right, and by the way, one aspect of this story that I feel like isn't getting enough attention is that in order to provide more funding for these teachers, the lawmakers had to agree to increase taxes for oil companies. And by the way, they hadn't increased taxes since the early 1990s. I think 1990 actually was the last time Oklahoma had increased taxes. And you know how the oil companies responded? These taxes are too high. I mean, and they're way more persuasive because they have much more sway over these lawmakers. They're the ones who donate to these lawmakers. So that's the reason why the teachers haven't gotten paid or haven't gotten a pay increase in well over a decade, whereas these oil companies hadn't had to deal with any tax increases. They've only gotten tax cuts, and now they have the audacity to complain as if they're the ones struggling. The oil companies are the ones struggling.
But Mary Fallin, who's in their back pocket, doesn't call them spoiled teenagers, right? And by the way, oil and gas that you get from Oklahoma is actually the property of the people of Oklahoma. So you can charge them anything you like. The reason your politicians don't do that and let them keep the overwhelming lion's share of the profits is because they get money from them. Right. That's how corruption works, and this is how it devastates your kids. So I love that the teachers are at the forefront of fighting back for you and your family.
Absolutely. All right, one final story for you guys, and I will get through this quickly because it's a doozy. So a woman did a DNA test through Ancestry.com, and the DNA test revealed that the person who she thought was her father was not her father. In fact, it was someone completely different who had also done an Ancestry.com DNA test and was in the system. Now, the test showed that her DNA matched a sample from a doctor more than 500 miles away, and though she had never heard of him, Ancestry.com predicted a parent-child relationship between the two. So this is a feature of Ancestry.com. If someone who has the same, genetic makeup as you is part of, this testing thing, then they'll come up if they have opted into that, right? So this doctor comes up and she looks at her birth certificate and realizes, wait, this obstetrician is the person who helped deliver me. And so then she found out that her parents had trouble conceiving, and so her mother got artificially inseminated by both who she thought was her biological father's sperm and then a anonymous donor sperm, but it turns out that the doctor had used his own sperm. And so now they're suing him. Drama.
Okay, so this Ancestry.com thing says this is doctor 500 miles away, Gerald Mortimer. She tells her parents are like, uh-oh. They're trying to decide whether to tell her or not. Then she finds her birth certificate and it says Gerald Mortimer. And she's like, but it's not the parent. It's the doctor who delivered her, as Anna explained. She's like, wait a minute, I know that name.
Yeah, but what's crazy is the parents didn't know that the doctor had used his own sperm.
Yes, what the parents asked for, and this is weird, is use the father's sperm, which had issues, and an anonymous donor, as Anna explained. And I guess, so like, I guess we'll never know, right? But they wanted the donor to be over 6 feet tall and have like brown hair and blue eyes and all these specifications. And Mr. Mortimer did not, or Dr. Mortimer did not. He's like, I'm gonna use my own sperm anyway. And apparently when they moved away, they found it weird that the doctor broke down and started crying from their town. It's because he knew that it was his daughter.
This is so crazy. This is insane. So Ancestry.com, I don't know. I mean, take your DNA test at your own risk because you might find things that you don't want to know.
But you will apparently get at the truth. So upside, downside. Okay, guys, much love. We're out of time here. The post game is going to be fun as always. And Rebel Headquarters is next. So bye. Thanks for watching what I hope was a lovely edition of the Young Turks. Now, you know that is 2 of the 5 segments that we do because that's free. We want to have you support independent media and come watch the whole show that we do every day. That's 5 segments overall, no ads at all. That's at tytnetwork.com/join. Come become a member. Thanks for watching either way. Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.